What's up, everybody? Welcome to part 4 here of our Game of the Year 2020 Rocket Punch Award Showcase Spectacular here. I am Cameron, the man behind the fist here at Rocket Punch. Seth is here as well, the Dark Lord of Hype himself. We are here. It's episode 4. We're talking about biggest impact. This is the award for this episode here. Seth, are you ready? We're back. This is the part 2, the second batch of episodes that we get to record in succession.
I am ready. In fact, this part is very interesting to me because I feel like this part is the not so much video games, like what happened in video games, as much as what happened around video games. This is more like a culture discussion, which I really like these because this is kind of like the analysis of the art versus... the analysis of the creation of the art versus an analysis of the art.
I agree with you too. Like, it's this one biggest impact as well as the next two that we're going to do in part 2, biggest fail and for the win. They tend to be a lot more. It kind of opens up. It's not like specifically at a game per se, but like if stuff happened within the industry that left a mark, whether good or bad. These are the episodes that we talk about them in. And really dive deep into why we made the picks that we did. So these are always very interesting conversations, guys. We're gonna jump right into it here, real fast. But before we do, just quick synopsis. If for some reason you were listening to these out of order, which you shouldn't be, go back to episode 1 and listen to that to start off. But this is Game of the Year 2020 here at Rocket Punch. This is how we do things. To give you a rundown, we have 10 categories. This is number 4 of the 10 biggest impact. What we do for each of these categories, guys, is we're going to pick 2 runners-up and then an eventual winner for our different categories there. We'll bounce back and forth and have those discussions here as we go through the night. And then once... all this, we're going to release these episodes. They'll be streamed first on Twitch, and then you'll be able to get them throughout the week, all the way through the month of January here, with the finale, part 10, being our Game of the Year discussion, which you guys will be able to catch live on twitch.tv/Rocket Punch Live, January 24th. They're probably at 7 p.m. It might be earlier than that as I'm thinking about it now, because that's a pretty big episode. Even with just one category, we talk a lot because there's a lot to talk about. It's Game of the Year. But guys, if you want to know more, make sure you're following either myself on Twitter at RocketPunchGo or Seth over there on Twitter as well at Darth Turner. We'll be retweeting any announcements that are made on the Rocket Punch account. And also as well, guys, the People's Choice Awards polls are up as well. So check me out over at Rocket Punch Go. You can go find the Google form and the link to that. That way you can make your voice heard. Let us know what you think about what should win, what wins for you in our categories, as well as some extra categories as well. As a teaser, I'm going to tell one of the categories they added into the form here this year. I think it is representative of 2020, is a quarantine certified game. For the game that you believe is the best one to play, you recommend for others to check out during COVID quarantine at home. So that had to be on there. Like I gotta make that one of the picks here, especially after
uniquely 2020, a uniquely 2020 award. We hope
it is. But guys, this might be the fastest time in we've done.
Good.
We are here, guys, to discuss biggest impact. Giving you a brief description of what we're looking for, guys, is first, biggest impact for the game or event that you believe left a large mark on the gaming industry this year. And that mark can be good or bad or indifferent. It doesn't matter. What the big thing is here is when we look at for biggest impact is like what was something that we saw, game, an event, whatever, that we think left a lasting impact on the industry that could potentially cause ripple effects throughout the industry, whether short-term or long-term. It just, this one, as well as a lot, these 3 are going to be a lot of very much opinions. That's why we have our own, we have our own picks there, is that, what I think was the biggest impact is not necessarily what Seth may pick as the biggest impact in gaming in this year, and so a lot of stuff. We have a lot of discussions and a lot of topics that we're going to get to discuss tonight. But Seth, are you ready? Okay, this is the second round, so
I want to go ahead and add one thing on to what you were saying. Remember, as always with any blank of the year thing, it is all subjective. But I would say that biggest impact is probably one of the most subjective categories, because what is impactful for Cameron is not going to be what's impactful for you, is not going to be what's impactful for me. It's like, it's so subjective. But I think that it's also like, these are my favorite discussions because you get to see and hear from me and Cameron we love games, but like we're very different in kind of how we synchronize with games. And so I like these kinds of discussions because you really get to talk about a lot of different things instead of just sitting around talking about, boy, Hades was good for roguelikes. Like it's the same thing that you're just kind of repeating over and over in other categories, but this one, a lot of cool opportunities. So let's
jump right in. I found my coin. So I have this lovely coin here.
Nice.
Today I will be a good dungeon master. Today I will be a not so great dungeon master. Here, I'm going to flip this up here. We'll say,
now, first off, you got to tell me where you got that coin, because that coin is really cool.
This coin I got look online for the lady, her kind of handle and what her products are under is double feature. Double feature product there. It's really cool. I remember getting it at a convention. I think it was at it might have been at DreamCack actually a couple years back. So
there you go.
But we will say white side will be.
Why not just do good or evil?
Yes, good side will be
good
me. Evil. Since you're the dark side, Seth, you will be the dark side. Whichever side it lands on is who gets to go first, and that'll start our run for these next 3 episodes. So you ready?
Sounds good. Let's do it.
Flip back.
Do it.
Flip back. You guys can see it. It's the dark side.
The dark side wins.
So, Seth, you will get to kick off our conversation for biggest impact, sir. Please go right ahead.
All right. So my first runner-up for biggest impact. This was a huge year. We had a lot of technical innovations. We had a lot of, I would say, like cultural innovations of gaming, kind of jumping forward. I think gaming surpassed sports, music, movies, pretty much everything this year. So big year for games. This was a difficult category for me, but my first runner-up that I have gone with is a bit of a softball. However, I cannot think of something that is going to have as much of an impact. Well, I can. Obviously, it's not the winner, but SSDs and consoles, solid-state hard drives, shipping inside of our current consoles. This is probably anyone who has who's owned a PC for more than 5 or 10 years have probably had that moment where you upgraded your hard drive to a solid-state drive, and it is a whole new world. Like, grab onto Aladdin and let's go on a carpet ride, because it's a whole new world of speed, reliability. It changes everything about how you enjoy the game, right? And I think that now that we have that level of speed and that level of just basically load screens are gone, right? Like, they're really not a thing anymore.
Well,
they're
for the most part, yes. You're correct. You are right.
The idea of the load screen being this thing that's like 20 to 30 seconds in length, it's basically on the way out. Now, obviously, like older games are seeing speed improvements, but we're not going to really see those full speed improvements until like once these these are kind of fully saturated.
I understand what you mean. I think you mean like the idea of the loading screen where it's like, if you're in Dark Souls and you die and it's like, well, I got 40 seconds, let me go take a piss real fast and then come back.
Yes.
Like that's gone. When you go through the smoke now, it's like smoke layer, boom, you're ready to go. Yeah. Continue on.
Exactly. And we're seeing games like the new Ratchet & Clank is going to be using this technology to make the gameplay more immersive and really honestly create an experience that's like unable to run on an older console because of that difference in speed. So as a technological advance, SSDs are going to really be the first step in console gaming really starting to become as powerful. I don't think it'll ever surpass PCs, but like I think that now the gap between those two platforms has definitely been shortened by a decent amount.
Mm-hmm.
And also, it's just now games that come out, the further we get into this generation, the further we get away from the hard disk drive era, we're going to be getting to games that are built and made for this. And so that's why I included it in biggest impact, is because we're not really seeing anything right now, but the switch has been flipped, right? You cannot purchase a current gen, I'm going to say current gen console that doesn't have this in it. So the bottom line has now moved up, right? The lowest common denominator of consoles right now that you can buy new is an SSD, and that's going to mean that
like the Switch,
all of them,
Xbox, PlayStation, they all have an SSD or some form of flash storage. Like the hard drive storage and the moving parts is gone. It's a relic of the past. Let the past die. Kill it if you have to.
Yeah, exactly. And so while it's maybe not the best for storage capacity, I think it was I'm impressed, because generally companies are very against doing this kind of thing. Like, I know PlayStation 5 and Xbox are both, if you want to play current gen games, like these next gen series or PS5 games, you've got to have them on the internal storage or some kind of approved high speed external storage, right? So there's no more going to Best Buy, buying a $30 USB hard drive, plopping it in and playing a game, which sucks from the value perspective, but that cheap USB connection was never going to be able to give you things like Ratchet and Clank, like what we're probably going to see in the new Perfect Dark and the new Fable and all these games that are coming down the line, right? That are going to be built from the ground up for these new machines.
Yep.
They're going to be loading worlds in faster than ever before. You're going to be the idea of the riding an elevator to hide the load screen, right? That elevator is not going to need to be 30, 45 seconds. That elevator can be 2 seconds, 1 second, or in some games cases optional, right? Like a game like Hades, if it were built for next gen, there would be you would walk through a door and then walk right through the next one. Like, visually that game could do it. So
and I think the other thing, to piggyback off a little bit of what you're saying, Seth, and kind of my thoughts on it as well, the other thing, and I think why this is a great pick for biggest impact, is that this isn't just for consoles. I really want to say, I think it would be fair to say, you could correct me if I'm wrong, somebody I'm sure will, please educate me if I'm wrong, but from what I'm thinking right now, I would say that consoles probably have a larger market share than PC gaming. I might be wrong on that?
By about 2%.
But
yes,
the fact that with SSDs coming to console, and I know we've talked, everybody's talked a lot about the technologies that developers are putting into their games when they're on consoles, like they load faster, and like Ratchet and Clank, the new game coming out where basically it's almost a gameplay mechanic, how things can load in so quickly because of the technology behind that. But we're also seeing, because of this, we're seeing developers, hardware and game and software developers, kind of take those advantages into the PC market as well, where they've had SSDs for a long time. I would bear to guess that a lot of gamers out there, now that SSDs, I believe, are within reach of gamers, the majority of gamers, I think we're going to start to see some of the technology hop on over to the PC gaming side as well, where we're going to see games that can leverage and take advantage of that fast loading time, as opposed to, I think we're still in that point on PC gaming where they have to kind of work with the greatest common denominator, which is still mechanical hard drives and the speeds on those.
Yeah, it's actually the dichotomy has shifted kind of, because I would argue that most gamers that have PCs with SSDs are probably using a slower, and we're not going to make this a technical discussion, but like a slower interface than what these new consoles have. These consoles are using those high speed, latest generation SSD technology, right? Whereas most gamers out there are not going to have that 150 to 250, special, looks like a stick of RAM hard drive. They're going to have, an Samsung SSD that you plug in with a cable, kind of like a traditional hard drive, but it's just faster, right? And while those are still super fast, they're not as fast as those direct input ones. However, every console that is in someone's home now has that ultra high speed stuff. So it's a kind of a weird dichotomy shift where it's like for years, PC gamers have had that SSD. They've had that lower cost, interface port, and then the higher cost, but higher speed. Now consoles are just at that high speed. So without getting too technical, the main thing here is SSDs are now the norm. They're the standard. And that means this is a new dawn for video games, for load screens, for the way games are made and what we can expect from our games moving forward. So that is my first runner-up for biggest impact of 2020.
Okay, good. That's a good one. That's a good one to start off with. I'm glad you went first. Mine is another. It's on my list, and as soon as I tell it, you'll know why. It's an impact that maybe not is rippling out across the entire gaming industry, but I think was pivotal enough. Whatever, blah blah. Words are hard if you don't know. Very important to this section, and it's. I think Seth, you'll concur with me. For a lot of these fans, it's a pretty big one. I could have put it in any of the other sections with biggest fail or for the win, but we really don't know the outcome of this yet. And my one of my runners up here for biggest impact is the executives leaving BioWare, quitting BioWare, specifically Casey Hudson and Mark Dara. For people, if you remember, because this is somewhat within recent history, out of nowhere, Mass Effect and Dragon Age leads Casey Hudson. Actually, Casey was the director. He was the big honcho. He was the head of BioWare, if I'm not mistaken, when they brought him back. And Mark Dara, who was working on Dragon Age, he was the director for Dragon Age 4. They just all of a sudden they just came up and said, "Boom, we're gone." They left.
Yeah.
And there was this
on the same day, same announcement. On the same day.
I'm referencing Polygon's article in case I miss anything, but this was a huge executive shift. The reason Casey Hudson was probably brought back on was kind of the issues that they had with Anthem and that launch, and then trying to bring him back on to kind of course correct that ship. And then Mark Dara moved over to Dragon Age 4 because it's Dragon Age. People want to see more Dragon Age. And I think that these two leaving had an impact on the entire studio. Because Mark Dara's gone, they had to move, if I'm not mistaken, Christian Daly, who was the kind of head guy running the entire Anthem revamp. They moved him over to Dragon Age 4, and I think I know the guy. Let me look at this article. I know his name. That got moved over to. I'm not going to spend a crazy amount of time trying to find the name here. Christian Daly. Blah 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 blah. Another guy got moved over to the Mass Effect team, and he's been a big. He's kind of been one of the big helpers with Mass Effect, and now he's head of the Mass Effect team. The reason I put this on my list, and the reason I think this is one of the biggest impacts for me, is BioWare is at a turning point. I think right now as a studio, a lot. They have a very. I'm not going to say that BioWare fans are like the largest fan base out there in games. I think there are a lot of larger fan bases, but I think they're up there as some of the more passionate ones. When a Dragon Age or Mass Effect game comes out, or any game from that studio and those group of studios come out, they are very much involved and vocal, letting the developers know what they love about the game, what they don't love about the game. And I think that Mass Effect is kind of behind the ball here. Or not Mass Effect, but just BioWare in general. They really haven't had a certified hit in a while, considering the lineage where they came from with Mass Effect and with Dragon Age. Kind of releasing Mass Effect Andromeda a couple of years back to lukewarm reception, releasing Anthem, which clearly needed more time in the oven to cook, and they needed more time, even though that game had a ridiculously long development period, and also it didn't help with the Jason Schreier expose on the entire Anthem development in general and kind of the secrets of how that game clearly needed more development time. And now, you know, they've got promising games coming up. They've got the Legendary Edition of Mass Effect. They teased already the next version, the next Mass Effect game, which will be a continuation of the original trilogy and skipping over Andromeda, or at least like maybe working a little bit of stuff in there on that. Dragon Age 4, which is, as of right now, just called Dragon Age. Is it a reboot? Yeah. Is it something else? We don't know. But like, you know, we've been getting some teasers about that the last couple of years, and that looks good. And that's all great. But I think this makes me nervous because, you know, I'm not a certified BioWare fan, but I like their games. I like Mass Effect. I've had some fun with Dragon Age. I've actually been kind of itching. I know this is a super deep cut for any Rocket Punch diehards. I feel like Sabrina, if she were listening, she would have a smile, like she would smile as I'm like, man, I want to get back into Dragon Age Inquisition. I never really got to. I don't think I gave that game a chance, and I want to continue to play that game and give it more of a chance.
It's on Game Pass.
Oh, damn. Shit.
EA Play on Game Pass.
Oh, crap. Okay. Hey. Damn it. And like in Anthem, I love Anthem. I'm Seth will confirm. I'm one of the few guys that's like, Anthem still, like, please fix Anthem. It's it has a great core, but all the things on the outer edge of that core is just trash, and it needs to be scrapped. And everything we've seen from that game so far looks great, but I remember when this came out and we talked about it in the Rocket Punch show, Seth, that like, I was like, people should be concerned, but maybe hold off before we say BioWare's in super big trouble. Really, and that's why it's really just one of my runners-up and not one of the big ones here, is because we don't know what's going to happen. You know, I will definitely say from history, changing executives like this is never a good thing, and the fact that they had 2 people leave for unknown circumstances should concern a lot of people, in my opinion. Yeah. The fact that they're having to do executive shuffle with all of their top tier properties, like, you know, Anthem fans are now concerned about how Anthem's going to go now that Christian Daly's pulled off. Dragon Age fans are a little concerned about what's going to happen with Dragon Age now that Mark Darrah's gone. Mass Effect fans are concerned about the Legendary Edition, and, you know, now that Casey Hudson isn't kind of steering the ship on there. And so it really puts a big question mark on BioWare, in my opinion. And BioWare's one of those bigger industry names that we've had for decades. And I'm really concerned about that. And I think that's going to, you know, BioWare leaving, you know, if something happens to BioWare, and I'm knocking on wood, you guys can hear it on the audio, like,
they love it. The listeners
I know they do. That's why I do it. If something were to happen to BioWare, that's a lot of rich property, a lot of games, beloved games that go away, and like, who's gonna fill that void for those type of games, really? And that's why. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh no. I was gonna say CD Projekt Red, but then here we are. It's we talked about this on the main show. Like, we're living in a post Witcher 3 world, and BioWare, you know, this is going to come up with discussions about Halo. There are a lot of 360 PS3 era juggernauts of the RPG world that just aren't juggernauts anymore. They're not. They haven't really delivered, right? And there's been like the new class of the CD Projekt Reds, the Lyrian Games coming in with a fantastic like ARPG kind of those classic style isometric RPGs. Like I would say there's a new tier or a new top tier of RPG creators, and unfortunately BioWare is not in that tier because really they haven't delivered on much of anything critically or commercially since Mass Effect 3, and even Mass Effect 3 in and of itself was a weird ism. You know, that ending was an ism.
It was a very like, the game sold well. There was a lot of controversy surrounding it because of the ending.
I think that's a great one though. Like the shakeup at BioWare is definitely a sign of change. You said something that was like, you know, any type of big change like this is bad. I wouldn't necessarily say it's bad. We don't want BioWare to become Lionhead, right? Lionhead was a studio that pretty much was like they were jettisoned because there was just a consistency of not performing, not shipping, right? And so Microsoft made the decision to jettison the studio rather than give them Lord knows it's probably the 8th chance that they were given, right? And so for gamers, we considered that a loss because we remembered what they had made, right? But we should never let, we shouldn't let I hate to use the term rest on your laurels. We shouldn't let companies like just rest on their laurels and just like be like, hey, remember that time 13 years ago when we made that really good game? Yeah, like we should still support these, you know, these people when right now the way that the industry is it's very competitive. You know, Sony has proven that you have got to have a high level of output in order to push your platform, right? And it's becoming more and more important to have multiple franchises that are very profitable, right? You want to have, you can't just have your one big winner and that be it. You want multiple touch points, right? So people feel like they're getting value in the whole of the experience. But we're getting way bigger than that. So I apologize for derailing this.
No, you're good. I just like that it's maybe not something that's rippling throughout the industry, but I think it was something that it's very big. Huge news, especially just years ago when Anthem came out. It was a big deal when they brought Casey Hudson back to lead the entire studio, and now what like not even 4 years he's gone for reasons we don't know. I think that's one of the big question marks is like we don't know what happened. The fact that this happened so suddenly does not make me believe that it was on best terms. So unless Danny O'Dwyer and NoClip kind of crack the case here and get us a documentary, I don't think we'll ever know. But I still think it's big for a lot of gamers in general, especially BioWare fans, and that's why it's one of my biggest impacts runner-ups.
Very nice, very nice. So my next one, you're going to be shocked that it's not the winner. But this is SSDs in consoles is a very technological advance, right? That was my first one. So my second runner-up for biggest impact, and again, these are not in any particular order. I'm just these two runners-up I would say are equal in importance. But man, the Megaton. This was a moment where I woke up with the phone in my hand and I read the tweet and I read the article. And I double checked the URL to make sure it was not a fake website. Because the day that Microsoft announced they were acquiring Bethesda Studios, and honestly, Bethesda Publishing and the Bethesda Softworks was a juggernaut day. And that was, for me particularly, was a line in the sand that they drew of their commitment to gaming, right? There's always been this weird murmur about, oh, the Xbox One launch was really rough. Like, is Microsoft, they're doing this diversified, like, xCloud, Game Pass approach. Like, are they really going to be making cool games, or are they just going to be making a platform for games to exist on, right? Are they kind of getting out of that industry? Nope.
Are they pulling a Sega?
Yeah. $7.5 billion cash on the table to acquire what I would say is probably one of the most valuable collection of IPs that is available for sale. Like, Nintendo is not going to sell you its collection, so that's
hold on a second, Seth. Remember, anything's for sale for the right price. Okay, don't ever question it.
You're right. Anything is for sale for the right price. But when you think about just the saga, the lineage of IP, right? Microsoft owns Doom, Cameron. Microsoft owns Wolfenstein. Wolfenstein was probably the game that put like shooters on PC. If you remember, that was like one of the first big
Wolfenstein
shooters.
came out before Doom, kids. So remember that.
And then, Doom, Wolfenstein. They own obviously Elder Scrolls and all of its, IP, and especially given the shakeup at BioWare that you just talked about, like Elder Scrolls is now one of the most valuable fantasy IPs, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And so you look at what Microsoft did when they announced that acquisition, and I've said this many times on the Rocket Punch show, I'll say it again here. There is no way on God's green earth that these games are coming out on other non-Microsoft consoles, right? Like it's PC and Xbox, period. That's where you're going to play Starfield. That's where you're going to play the next Elder Scrolls. That's where you're going to play the next Doom. Like all of them are going to be on Xbox platforms. And that is not I don't think that's an anti-consumer, anti-gamer stance, because PC is literally, that's considered the most open platform.
No, man, look, everybody hates exclusives. We're so mad at Sony because they won't let us play The Last of Us on PC.
Everyone hates exclusives that they don't have access to, and for the last 7 years, everyone has had access to everything good on PlayStation, and so now we're in this world where people are competing again, right? And you know, like I'll use this exact quote from our Rocket Punch show from when that was announced. By doing this, Microsoft bought their way back in to the conversation. They bought their seat back at the table for gaming, because before, if you looked at the launch for the Xbox One, with the exception of like Sunset Overdrive, there were very few games that were like really compelling. You know, Titanfall 1 was another Xbox One exclusive. There were very few Xbox One exclusives, especially when you looked at Persona, Last of Us, you know, just everything that Sony's come out with this past generation. So by doing this, I think Microsoft really showed a commitment not only to creating first-party exclusive content, but Cameron, I have to just go ahead and reemphasize that as much as Sony is dominating the third-person narrative-focused action-adventure game, Microsoft now dominates the RPG industry. They own literally, I would say, the 5 most talented RPG developers. You've got Obsidian, you've got Bethesda Softworks, you've got In Exile Entertainment, you've got, I'm going to count Playground Games and Fable because I do think they're going to knock that out of the park as far as getting back to that. And it's just, when you think about the RPG power that they now possess, and I used Bethesda as one blanket, but think about, you know, that's Elder Scrolls Online, that is Elder Scrolls proper, that is, it's just, there's so much that they have at their disposal. Sorry, that was they have so many studios at their disposal now, and so many IP at their disposal, that it's really amazing to see this level of commitment. And the last thing I'll say about this Bethesda acquisition is this literally doubled their number of first-party studios, surpassing their competitor Sony in the number of first-party studios that they own. Again, not a discussion about quality, but like, I think that when you look at Sony and Microsoft together, right, each of them have a fantastic lineup of first-party studios that are now making games at full steam, right? They're fully focused on their, you know, respective lanes. Sony with a $70 next-gen game, Microsoft with building value in Game Pass and launching on Steam and things like that. So that is why I say Microsoft acquiring Bethesda was one of the biggest long-lasting impacts that we're going to see from the year 2020.
And I'll concur, especially as a guy who is on the Sony side most of the time, or at least plays a lot of my stuff on the Sony side. Like, it should never be discounted. Like, you know, Seth, we've had this discussion off mic, and next year there will be a topic where we talk about this in depth, and it might actually end up taking like an entire show. I don't know, but like, the whole question of like, do exclusives matter? And if you've listened to me talk about it before, I am of the opinion that yes, they do. There is a reason. The reason for exclusives is to get people to subscribe to your service and stay within your ecosystem. That's what everybody does. You know, I understand how people. I understand the feeling of like, I can't play this game, but a lot of the time the reason for that is because I don't have this system. The point of the exclusive is to get you to get that system. Sony wants you in their ecosystem. Microsoft wants you in their ecosystem. You know, Nintendo wants you in their ecosystem. You know, that is how, those are what help differentiate, and that is market competition. Like, the fact exclusives and the success from Sony are the reason that Microsoft bought Bethesda and ZeniMax Studios in the first place. So they can have a large swath of studios that they can go to in this kind of one big area, and all these guys can work together and talk about, you know, what are good successes, what are things they're trying to avoid, to elevate all of those studios' games to create some of the best games that we as gamers can enjoy. That is what, you know, this is not a knock on anybody else, but that is what I think Sony has done in the last couple of decades with all of their studios. The reason that we have a Horizon Zero Dawn or a Days Gone or a Ghost of Tsushima is because of those studios kind of within Sony's camp working together. And now we're going to see that with Microsoft in those studios in that camp, specifically the Bethesda ones. Is it going to be overnight? No. That's why, like, I am one of the first people at the camp that has, been critical of Microsoft and saying, like, I love what they're doing. I love their services. I love their systems. I want to see some new, awesome, exclusive, original IP games from them. And I think that's what's going to elevate them over Sony in the long term because of, if they can get to that point, then they also have the services like Game Pass and other systems like Xbox Live to back them up and make them, not that they weren't before, but even more of a premier gaming service before. And so I think I'm with you. I really like this pick from you on Biggest Impact. And it was a big one. I remember us talking about it. I remember recording a Rocket Punch Opinions on it. It was a big discussion that we had on this one. So,
and we have there's one more point I'm going to make about this, because there's one thing I like to share on here. When I listen to a lot of video game podcasts, a lot of gaming journalism focuses on the development and the I guess the boots on the ground, the coding part of it. And the business side of things is always considered this like nasty, gross kind of, we don't want to think or talk about it because it's the big bad businessman. But business is, the reason that when you see how awesome their offices look and how, they have access to all these cool things and get to work on games is because of the business, right? And so I've tried to provide a little bit of business context to help humanize the business side a little bit, because business is also about people.
Don't be distracted. These are all businesses. Microsoft is a business. They want to make money.
At what is going on with the Bethesda thing right now? Everyone's been talking about I don't know what's going to happen. What's going to happen? Those talks have not even started yet. When an acquisition like this, especially of this scale, is announced, basically Microsoft comes forward and says, "We intend to buy this studio for this amount of money." And at that moment, everything is frozen about both of those companies, right? This is how this thing goes on, and they're really not allowed to talk to each other outside of the negotiations for selling this company, right? Especially with one this big. So after all of this shenanigans is done and the papers are signed, then they can sit down and they can start to strategize. So Phil Spencer's been on multiple podcasts. I was actually listening to the Major Nelson show earlier this week, and he even said, we haven't even talked about the strategy of this yet. Like obviously there's a strategy that Microsoft has in purchasing them, but they haven't talked to Bethesda about are these games going to come to PlayStation also? Are we going to change the way that games are made in order to make them more or less likely to fit into Game Pass? All those discussions they haven't touched them yet because the deal isn't done, right? But come June, July, I think we're going to see that deal ties up. And so I would expect to hear a lot more about this later next year. But as far as the impact and the actual announcement, it happened this year. And that's why I wanted to put it in Biggest Impact for this year.
Good deal. Good deal.
Back to you.
All right, it's back to me. Yeah, I have to put this one on here. I just found this out, but the fact that this specific my next runner-up for Biggest Impact has an entire Wikipedia page about it is shocking to me, and even feeds even more to the fire why I think this needs to be added on here. And my runner-up for Biggest Impact, my other one, is Epic v. Apple. I'm not even going to get into specifics. I think we've talked about it on a podcast episode before, but Epic v. Apple, what started out as Epic, hey, let's see if we can work in on the App Store and, let's just sell stuff directly through the App Store, bypassing the 30% cut that Apple takes, and then Apple shutting that down, and then Epic already having these videos prepared that people in Fortnite could watch that's basically a parody in some sense of the 1984 Apple commercial, and free Fortnite, because Fortnite got banned off Apple stuff, and it also got banned off of Google Play because of their tactics and stuff. And now it's this whole back and forth of Epic saying they're fighting to try and get more money for smaller developers and also themselves. And then Apple's well, no, this is our storefront and we get the 30%. This whole, in the show notes and in the video for VOD, I will put the link directly to this Wikipedia page. You guys can peruse it as you will. There is a lot of crap going on in here, but It is one of my runners up, and I think it belongs on this list purely because, and funny enough, this is a thing that people tend to forget. I think is that, you know, regardless of how you feel, if you don't play them at all, mobile games are games too. And I think that this, which is very much a very like has been targeted very mobile-esque because of the fact that it's with Apple, and Apple has iPhones and, you know, mobile devices and their app store and whatnot. But I think this is something that could also bleed into the console space as well. And we've seen it before in years past with Epic, funny enough. Same person, Epic Game Store versus Steam. And that whole, you know, fight when Epic was saying, hey, it's 88-12 as opposed to the 70-30 cut. And it's really shaking up the industry on what people think is the right type of compensation for the developers that are putting their games and services on a platform versus the platform holders who are hosting those games and managing those servers. And it's, I think nobody's going to disagree and say that, you know, we're all going to agree and say that each company should be compensated for their hard work. But like how much that is, you know, that's where we're starting to see the heads tilt, because we talked about it, I think, on a show, Seth, that 70-30, the 70-30 split was a part of the time. You know, that's a decade or so old. Back in 2007, when there wasn't, when the App Store came out and there wasn't a whole lot going on with the App Store. When storefronts came out, even before then, when Steam had the Steam Store and they were the juggernaut and it didn't matter. You don't want to pay that 30%. Good luck finding any other place to sell your game, because there's not a storefront on there. And now we're getting into this place where, in my opinion, we're having a lot more competition. Let's look on the PC front. With now we have the Epic Game Store, but also with that, we're seeing a lot more studios that release their own games within their own bubbles, like the Ubisoft launcher, the EA launcher, Blizzard, which has always done their stuff there, and kind of seeing if this is going to happen in the mobile game space as well, with Apple and Google. And I think that one's a little bit of a harder sell to do, because iOS and Android are kind of locked ecosystems for those people. And if they don't want to do that, for whatever reason, they don't have to. Windows just does it because it's Windows, and like, hey, it's, we already did it before, so why change stuff? We're doing great. But I think this needs to be on the list because of the discussion about compensation for these game developers. I mean, ripple effects, this has already caused, I think, a couple of weeks ago, Apple has already announced saying that they're going to institute a plan in the new year where game developers, especially smaller ones, it'll only be a 15% cut up to the first $1 million. And then after that, then it switches over to the 30% cut, which is a similar thing that Steam has done as well. On the Steam Store, in order to compete with Epic Games, the Epic Games launcher, and that 88-12 split, and kind of seeing some stuff like that, I think it's impactful because even from an App Store standpoint, and maybe spreading even more so throughout the industry, I think this will continue to allow game developers, especially smaller game developers, to get the chance to recoup a lot of the money. Success or not success, but at least be able to retain some more money on the sales of their games. Think about, I have a book that I need to finish because I've got like a few more pages left. The Pixel, the game for Jason Schreier book. Oh, what is it?
Blood, Sweat, and Pixels.
Blood, Sweat, and Pixels. Thank you. I remember reading the story about Concerned Ape and Stardew Valley, and the fact that all the work he put in, the fact that he's working at a movie theater and he's coming home and he's coding for years and he builds this game and he just releases it and it just blows up. That is awesome for him. What if it didn't blow up? What if it was even just like, hey, it was an okay game, all right, success. Yeah. He's still having to pay that 30%. With now, with some of these changes and at least us able to reevaluate this stuff now, maybe he retains a little bit more money if he doesn't cross that $1 million threshold. Yeah, on iOS store.
That is the point I think to make here is that with concern, and it's interesting you mentioned Concerned Ape and Stardew Valley, because I think that when you look at a game like Stardew Valley, it is a great like underdog story, right? He, worked at the movie theater, launched this game, but he is selling millions upon millions upon millions of copies of this, right? I would say that yes, and I think he would agree with me that yes, he should be paying 30% because these platforms are allowing him to make that living, right? If that game didn't launch in early access on Steam, it would not have blown up. Very few people are going to go to StardewValley.com and download a launcher just to play it, right? Like the one game this year that did that was Genshin Impact, and for me, launching that launcher is one of the big reasons I stopped playing that game, is because it's just not as easy to get to as other games, right?
Yeah.
So, and I don't think that, I can't speak for Concerned Ape himself, but like I don't think he feels like he's getting gypped by having to pay those fees. What this is talking about, what you're talking about, Cameron, is that person who they sold a game for $10 and they moved 200,000 units, right? And that's probably impressive, but like you think about $10 times 200,000, that's actually a lot of money, but
it's $2 million, but even then, like 30% is cut from that, as opposed to if, even with the system that Apple has now, like if they do 15% on the first million, they get a 15% on half of that money back. Which is, and it may not seem like a lot to your EAs or your Activisions or anybody like that, but that's a big deal for a small studio or indie studio.
And another thing that I think is really important, and why I think this particular versus case, because some people might say that, oh, this happened with Epic when they did the Epic Game Store versus Steam, right? Like when they first launched that was a thing. But Apple versus Epic is on a battlefield with much higher stakes, right? Like I talk about this a lot, but gamers, educate yourself on the data. The data is what matters. Steam, probably around 200 million users, give or take, right? Like that are actually actively using the thing.
Probably.
So you're counting in hundreds of millions, right? Apple, billions of people use mobile devices. Billions of people are engaged in these platforms, and so the stakes are a lot higher here, because you think about how much money people can make on Steam, like they make 4 or 5 times that on mobile, right? Because of the way that mobile is structured and the payment, the microtransactions, that kind of thing. So it is much more lucrative to make games on mobile than it is to make games on a, more traditional gaming platform. But this court case is going to dictate whether or not those platforms will remain exclusive, and whether or not, Cameron, there's a weird future where if, Apple and if Apple comes out on top in this, where Epic starts to look at, okay, we're going to release a version of Android that is for Fortnite, and you will root your Android device, install Fortnite OS, right? And that will be the Fortnite operating system.
My heart.
And so that's a weird future. But another weird future is the one where, I could install like completely custom, data script to like scrape all of your personal information on your iOS device, which is known for being, so there's like dark sides on both sides of it. So this court case, I don't think will be resolved for years. I think this will take at least a year, maybe 2.
It'll be
to
a
get
while.
Resolved.
Yeah.
And my hope is that it sits somewhere down the middle, right? I want small developers to have an opportunity to make more money. But Epic Games, you got to pay, dude. Like you can't pad your wallets even further by.
Because Epic's one of those bigger companies that they will also happen to take advantage of some of that as well. And like we talked about it in the episode. I totally agree with the fact that is 70-30 fair right now? Probably not. I think gaming's gotten a lot bigger. Things have changed a lot from a decade or so back. Should it just be platform holders do their entire stuff for free? No, 100%. Like some people forget about the resources and the servers and the management and the technology alone that allows you to go on your computer or go on your phone and go to your app store and click a button and it downloads within seconds. That's a luxury that these platform holders have worked tirelessly behind the scenes, making sure that server upkeep is up. I remember the discussions about like, oh, what about what happened to why do we have to pay money for Xbox Live and PlayStation Plus and stuff like that? You're paying for the server upkeep, like the fact that we can enjoy seamless connections with our friends and family, especially after 2020 in this COVID era that we live in. You should be happy that we're only paying $60 for server upkeep a year, and I think this is going to have ripple effects whenever it gets hashed out. It's already starting to show ripple effects here, but I'm hoping that this. Also, like you said, Seth, like the reason it's on my list is its impact specifically on developers, and the fact that I'm hoping that this may allow some smaller indie developers a chance to recoup more of the costs on the games they sell, even if they're not big hits like Hades or Astroneer or Stardew Valley or anything like that. Even if they sell a modest amount, they can still come back and say, "Man, I got some more money back." Because I didn't have to pay that 70-30 split. And that's why, a lot of eyes are still on this entire court battle. So that is why it's one of my runners-up as well for biggest impact.
Great discussion. Man, that was a good one.
Got chills.
Very, very good choice. All right, so now it is time for my choice for biggest impact of 2020. And this is something that is... You ask yourself, you're like, Seth, you said SSDs and consoles, Microsoft acquiring Bethesda. Those are 2 gigaton announcements. What could be bigger than that? And Cameron, the final selection, the number 1 choice for biggest impact from me is got to be the introduction of xCloud and cloud-based gaming as an option. Let me go ahead and bold, italicize, put that on a large billboard, foam fingers, the option to play your games via cloud-based service is without question the biggest leap forward for video game engagement since the introduction of a handheld device, right? Like,
whoa.
Because I've said this before, I'll say it again. Cloud-based gaming is not about replacing, let me give you a quick jargon lesson, because I learned this year as well. So there's cloud solutions and they're called edge solutions. So edge would be like the local solution, like the local processing computer power. So there's your fun lesson for the day, right? So thinking about a game like Cyberpunk, right? Technical powerhouse.
Okay.
Again, forget all that's going on with it, but it is a beautiful looking game when it is running at its peak, right? And so that is a game that was built to run on an edge device, right? It is built to run on a local machine. However, what if you had the option to play that game at that level of power? Maybe not the same crispness as far as control, but pretty damn close. But you could do it on your mobile device while you were out and about, or you could do it on the couch while another person's using the television, right? Those are the use cases I see for xCloud. So I'm going to talk specifically about xCloud because there are a couple of entries in this, right? I used Stadia this year. Stadia is a big name that's out there. Luna is kind of a new up-and-comer from Amazon. But I think xCloud right now has the best market position to succeed because of what Xbox Game Pass has done for games, period, right? It is, as of right now, if you own an Android device, you can play any game from Xbox Game Pass in xCloud, which means you can whip out your phone, you can whip out your Android tablet, and you can play those games via the cloud. Mark my words, by the end of this year, 2021, you will be able to play it on a Windows PC and probably on your television doing the same thing, right? You downloading an Xbox app and it's streaming via your smart television, right? So immediately it is going to be as dispersed across your devices as Netflix is, right? So that's the first component. The next component to this is what it is going to do, not only for, I'm going to call them edge gamers. So these are gamers on the very edge of the fandom, right? You look at 2020, you have seen a lot of those edge cases come into gaming through games like Fall Guys, through games like Among Us. These games that have kind of brought people who maybe don't play more than 5 or 6 hours of games a week, they're now playing those games for more hours, right? Now, I'll use Among Us as the example because this is probably the most relevant and recent example, right? So Among Us is a game that blew up. I think it's now the second or third most popular video game as far as player base. And so all those people got into that game via mobile devices, right? That is how that number was able to get so big, is because you can play it for free on mobile. Now imagine that person downloads Among Us and they're like, oh man, this game's really, really, really cool. And then you discover that, oh, through that same client, let's say, or through that same mobile device, you could also play Cyberpunk. You could also play, I'm trying to think of a more practical example, like a game like Stardew Valley, which I know it has its own mobile version, but like, let's say, what happens when the next Stardew Valley comes out, right? And it's only on Xbox right now, or it's only on PC, yet it's in Game Pass, so in theory, you could play it on your mobile device. And so what you're going to see is you're going to see gamers who play on local devices, on these edge devices, they're going to be spending more time playing games because they can play it away from their computer, right? And if you don't believe that, oh, well, who's going to play games away from their computer? The Nintendo Switch has literally built an empire on that philosophy. So don't tell me that it's not there, because how many of you have your Switch docked more than you have it free? You know, if you have the option to take it with you, you're going to probably take it with you.
Yeah.
That's not alienate the option to play it. You know, and that's why, again, I said the option to play it via the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
But bringing this back in, like, xCloud is one of these services. Phil Spencer's already said that this year they're going to be doing their best to introduce the ability to buy games in it. Right now, I think that's Stadia's entire business model, you know, is buy games in it. I think Luna's going with kind of a hybrid, like you're going to subscribe to channels. So you'll get the Ubisoft channel, and that will basically be like Ubisoft Game Pass, right? And so you'll get this kind of almost weird, like bundling cable type of thing, but the market will bear out which of these processes work. I think Game Pass is definitely the one that will work the most because it's very simple to explain. But once they add in the option to purchase games a la carte, that is when I think you're going to see a new market segment appear with gaming. Both, you know, these kind of on the edge of gaming gamers will be more likely to come in because they're not having to buy a $300 or $400 console to buy in, right? They're able to just pull out their phone and try out a game, right? Mm-hmm. But then also, when you look at other countries, right? Like America is one of the most engaged as far as spending's concerned. But when you look at total revenue, total user base, total everything, it is undeniably the East, specifically China and Korea, right? Those are huge markets. And the reason those markets are so big is because almost everyone plays on a mobile device, right? So you're looking at a lot of potential there for the next big Xbox game. We'll say Starfield comes out. It's, you know, critically, like, it's like Skyrim, right? Everyone's talking about it. Everyone's playing it, right? And now you tell me, wait a second, I can just pull out my phone, get 1 month of Game Pass for free, and play this new Starfield game on my phone? Like, yes, that's exactly how Among Us became the hit that it was. It's not a hit because it's the first idea ever. No, that game has been made 1,000 times on various different platforms. But it was accessible enough to be easy to get a hold of, but it was also fun and engaging enough to be a game that people kept coming back to, right? So when you look at what xCloud is going to do, it is going to allow any developer in the world to reach that level of fame and glory if they make the right idea, right?
Yeah.
So that is, when I think about like what's going to change gaming forever, again, xCloud will not replace your gaming PC. It will not replace your console. It is not going to replace those items. It is going to enhance that experience, allow you to engage with it when you're not at those devices. And then for some people, surprise, there are people out there other than yourself and other than hardcore gamers that also play video games. For those people, it's going to give them an option to engage in a platform without buying a platform. And that makes it the biggest impact, in my opinion, for 2020 moving forward into gaming. So do you have any thoughts that you want to add into that? I know I just mini ranted. It's huge.
you mini ranted as well. Like, yes, I'm with you. Like, cloud gaming, and I think what a lot of people, especially a lot of our hardcore gamers, like, you know, people get so invested in stuff like their console wars and Xbox and PlayStation and Nintendo and whatever, that some people forget the bigger scope in the fact that mobile gaming is the big leader. Especially, you know, we're all in a little bubble here in the United States, but look around the world. Mobile gaming has such huge success in the Asias, in Europe, all across the world. There, because of that ability to get people who might be interested in games but maybe don't want to pay the $2, $3, $4, $5, $600 plus that it's going to cost to get you into gaming. But the fact that you already have a phone and you can download a game like Among Us, like Stardew Valley, and interact with that, maybe the taste that they can get in order to jump in and try some other stuff. And now the fact that now you can get these bigger budget games that they hear so much about, like Cyberpunk, like The Last of Us, like, like Halo, all these other games, and I can stream them to my phone. Oh boy, let me figure this out. Let me learn more. It really opens up the door to easier access for these kind of casual gamers to play and participate and enjoy these experiences that we love to do all the time. We love to talk about all the time. And I think that yes, we've had issues before, and I think we'll still continue to have issues. Look at Stadia, look at Luna. I think xCloud is kind of out of beta now, but it's still. This is still an evolving service. This is something that's going to take years to perfect and get right. There are still large parts of the United States that do not have reliable enough internet to even attempt this. So it's going to be a while. But when we get to the point where we're able to have this technology work, it's really going to be a shifter, even for a lot of hardcore gamers, I think, as to what they're going to play. The fact that, and Microsoft talked about it before, you can start downloading a game locally, but if you're an Xbox Game Pass subscriber for Ultimate and it's on xCloud, let me go ahead and just start playing it now and stream it to my device while it's downloading in the background. Stuff like that is just instant access. And, for good or bad, and that's a discussion we'll shelve for another time, the ability to instantly access your content is what's going to drive a lot of engagement up and introduce a lot of new players into the technology. So I'm with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't wait to see. And honestly, the next big step for that is to see when Sony will introduce it, because I do think that Sony is going to be working on a version of PlayStation Now that is kind of like Game Pass, where they're going to include a selection of games, sell it to you, let you stream it. And once that happens, remember, Cameron, one person dancing like a crazy person in a field is just a crazy person dancing in a field. But when a second person joins in, now it's a rave, right? So once you have a second person join that subscription-based, cloud-based model, then again, not replacing. I'm not saying that Sony's going to stop making $70 games to sell you. They will do that until the sky burns out. But the option will be available, and that option is going to let new types of people enter gaming that have never entered it before. I know we talk all the time about hardcore gamers, core gamers. I've talked about edge gamers. Every human on planet Earth has a potential to be a gamer. Gaming is a story art form, right? And so it is a way to deliver emotions and experiences through an interactive medium, right? So even if you've never played a video game, you have the potential to be a gamer, but you're not a movie watcher, right? You're people watch movies. People like watching movies. And I think that gaming is to the point now where anybody and everybody can engage with it some way, whether it's locally, through PCs or consoles, or via the cloud in xCloud and Luna and whatnot. So that's why I say xCloud and cloud gaming, biggest impact of 2020.
Okay.
Boom.
Well done. Mic drop. Mic drop? I don't know. But it's now time for my winner here. Let me make sure I'm quoting my correct one. Yep, I'm quoting my correct one. I think that I respect the cloud gaming, and I think you're correct, Seth. That needs to be on the list, especially after this year and kind of the technologies that have happened. But I think nothing has impacted this industry more than my number one pick. My winner for biggest impact is COVID-19 and how it impacted the gaming industry.
And the winner is the disease.
The disease.
No. I know what you mean.
Dude, it's COVID came through last year, and it threw everything out of whack. And at one point you can see this as like, this is, yeah, it perfectly makes sense. At the other end you say, man, this is the easy pick. But it should not be discounted how big of an impact COVID-19 in this pandemic has impacted. And the reason I picked this as well is this isn't, we're video games primarily. This isn't just for video gaming. This is for all gaming. The fact that since this pandemic, number one, and I separated this, then I really thought about it. I'm like, no, this kind of needs to fall under one thing. E3 2020, the first time an E3 has been canceled in its entire 26-year history, happened this year because of COVID.
You're right.
Multiple studios and game developers shifted their games, delayed them. Some of the biggest titles this year: The Last of Us, Cyberpunk 2077, I don't know about Call of Duty, but like other studios like that, shifting their games and having to delay them either to the end of the year or to 2021 because of COVID. Things like console shortages. The fact that, especially in a year that we launched next-gen systems, even technology, we're going into PC gaming with PC gaming parts. And manufacturing of those were constrained, and we don't really have as much as we expect because of COVID and this virus. It's conventions. The idea of conventions, you have no idea, everybody who's listening, how badly, I had a plan to start going to more conventions and networking with more people and getting more friends within the content creator space to learn from and grow from and make better content for you guys. But that didn't happen because of fucking COVID. And that is...
Yeah, you're right.
It cannot be understated how big of an impact COVID has had on this entire industry. The fact that studios, are empty now. People are working from home, and the the fact that we live in 2020 and there are a lot of things that can make it easier for us to work from home, like Zoom, what we're doing right now, Seth, communicating via the internet. But like file sharing applications like Dropbox or Google Drive, things like that, et cetera, et cetera. But that's still, there's only so much you can do to kind of have parity. There's still going to be a drop in parity because some of the stuff as a game developer, if you need to talk to somebody from programming over to art, you can walk over to their section and desk and talk to them, as opposed to now you've got to find a way to contact them. And if they're in a meeting with somebody else, or if they're not at their house at some point, then you can't contact them, and delays could happen. You might have to email people. If you're across the world, if you're a part of a studio that's in England and you're trying to talk to somebody in California, the hours gap in there as well has made it and COVID has made that even worse. And this is not even considering the fact that if you contract COVID, the quarantine procedures you have to go through, and if you are sick, going to the hospital and you're out and you're done. And if you're a critical component of a game development team, then you're done. But and I mentioned earlier, not even just video gaming, but the fact that, I am playing Dungeons and Dragons with some coworkers online. And the fact that I have to do it online as opposed to we can't do it in person, which I prefer, but because of COVID, you can't do that. It's really telling to see how hard COVID has affected. We're just focusing on the gaming industry. It's affected the entire world, but specifically the games industry in and of itself. How much of an impact COVID-19 has done with everybody from game developers to programmers to corporations to gamers themselves doing what we can in order to accommodate. The fact that I remember when I got my Xbox and my PlayStation from Best Buy, they were very much like, okay, if you pre-ordered it, you can come pick it at the store, but any new batches are not going to be in the store. You have to go online first and then pick it up at the store, or just get it shipped to your house. You don't, you can't just walk in the store and check the stock with your eyes and say, oh, they have one in stock, I want that right now. No, sir. It's all online. And not even just talking about like from what has happened here, but I've talked about it in other facets as well, but I think that it stands to reason that's going to happen in the gaming industry as well. COVID is going to make corporations, make game developers, studio heads, even gamers and businesses themselves that sell games take a real hard look at how the practices that we've done so much in years past in the game industry, like conventions and like game releases and like game development. It's going to really, they're going to have a real hard look, taking a look at that and taking a look at their practices and seeing, kind of forcing themselves to see maybe what can we do better? What lessons can we learn from COVID that we can improve and make our stuff even better, or, you know, for whatever reason in the future. And you know, the fact that I think this may give an opportunity for maybe some parts of game development. They can say, oh, you know what? Maybe it costs us less if we have these group of people work from home. Maybe in these particular specific instances, we can have people that for medical reasons or something or other need to work from home. And maybe we can provide that type of support to them. Maybe because of COVID, we've learned a lesson in our game development practices and how we build games. And maybe we need to go to route B in order to plan and streamline our process on making games. There's a lot of different things can come from this. And the fountain is going to be rich when all this is said and done. But I think the fact remains that COVID-19, this is the biggest ripple effect in 2020. And this is going to stretch years and decades forward on what has happened here with this pandemic, and to how developers and corporations and people approach games specifically. I mean, on the positive, gaming, the COVID-19 pandemic, I feel like I've been like picking negatively on it. It has brought gaming very much to the forefront of the entertainment industry as the biggest entertainment piece, aside from like movies and TV stuff, because, you know, those have their own thing. But games you can pick up, order online, have it shipped to your store, and pick up a console or play it on your computer and just have some entertainment. You can't go bowling, you can't go golfing, but you can play some games at home. Pick up a controller and play. And I think that is why I almost feel, even in talking about this, like I feel like I'm not even emphasizing how much of an impact COVID has.
Yes. I want to talk real quick about something. So I'm a UX designer by day, right? And so when I'm not talking about video games here and spewing my opinions forth for you all to consume, I am spending time thinking about the experience that people have with, in my case, digital products, right? There is this concept in designer, or in the UX design world of creating journeys, right? You want to create a journey map. How do things look, right? So if I want you to come into my website and buy a product, or if I want you to download my app and create an account, what does that process look like, right? But journeys apply to so many different areas of the digital world, right? And if you think about technologies are a journey, right? So they go through a beginning, a middle, and an end, right? Every technology will go through this. Some will last decades, right? The internet is not a technology that is going to go away, right? But it is going to evolve and change. It already has in the 40 some odd years that it's been around commercially, right? So when you look at gaming and the timeline of gaming as a whole, right? Where we are at the end of 2020 is where we probably would have been at the end of 2024 if COVID had not happened, right? You think about the advancements in just the raw number of gamers, right? I think the latest stat from 2020 is about 3 billion gamers there are 3 billion people on this planet gaming, right? That is almost half the world's population, right? That's compared to a couple years ago. I think 2 years ago it was at 1 billion. So there's your growth factor, right? Like through the entirety of all the glory years, quote unquote, of gaming, we got to 1 billion. And in the last 2 years, we've gotten from 1 billion to 3 billion. So like right there shows you that the growth curve is huge for gaming. And so all the things you talked about, Cameron, they have basically thrown gaming in a DeLorean, hit 88 miles per hour, and we have gone straight to the future We are now in a world that we probably wouldn't have gotten to until 2022 to 2024 at the earliest. And it's cool. Like you're starting to see things like xCloud, things like
Hey, look, Seth, you're going to see some serious shit, okay? That's all I got to say.
Yeah, you're about to see some serious shit. And this year, I'm so excited about this year, Cameron, because I'm going to see, hopefully, fingers crossed, we get that vaccine out and people take it. And we start to get out of the danger portion of this pandemic, right? But as we exit the danger portion, we're going to get into the fallout, not the video game, but the outcome, right? Like what happened after the reaction of COVID. And what I think we're going to see is we're going to see more opportunity for people who don't live in the hubs, meaning if you don't live in San Francisco, if you don't live in LA, if you don't live in those big cities. In fact, there's actually an exodus happening right now. People are leaving California because it's such a bad place to live when it comes to money that Elon Musk has moved out of California to Texas because it is so much cheaper. I live in Huntsville, Alabama. The salary that it takes to support me is much lower than the salary. I don't even mind disclosing this. I split the mortgage for our house. Our mortgage is $650 for a home. That is a kitchen in an SF apartment, in a San Francisco apartment, right? Like that is not even a fraction of a fraction.
I think you're being generous about the kitchen part. It's probably like a bedroom.
Yeah, that's like maybe a corner of a bedroom, like a couch, right?
Yeah.
And so now and this was one thing. As soon as this pandemic happened, and this is not COVID watch, I'm not going to talk about it. But as soon as this happened, the first thing I did, and I think tons of other people did this, I invested in good lighting, good camera, good audio. I built my home studio to be a remote first workplace because, when I look for jobs moving forward, I have a fantastic job right now. I hope I keep it for a very, very, very long time. But there's going to come a day probably when I need to find a new job. And when they ask me, are you able to work remote? The answer, because they're going to ask it, my answer is going to be remote is my standard. That's my default. Like I am prepared to work remote. If I need to come to an office, I can, but I can be just as productive without you spending all this money to have me drive into a building to do that. So I'm getting off topic.
Your answer is going to be, can you work from home, Mr. Turner? Of course, let me show you this podcast that my friend and I do.
Exactly, right?
Oh, there you go.
So you're right, Cameron. And honestly, again, we're not competing with our answers. This isn't a competition, but you are right in that the impact that you have chosen is gargantuan. It is global in scale. Mine is like gaming, kind of, sort of, but yours is definitely a global thing.
Yours is, I think yours is like the longer term, like it's smaller ripples now with longer term effects.
Yeah.
I think mine is like big impact now, but I think it's as we get further away from this, those ripples are going to slow down a little bit more, but they're still going to be effective. It's kind of it's opposites, I think, in my opinion on it. So.
Great, man! I gotta say this is a great conversation. I've loved this topic.
I love these conversations.
One of my favorite topics. The only downside to this category is that it tends to also have a lot of I'm going to call them quick honorable mentions, things I just want to kind of shout out.
Yes,
there are a lot of things, but
let's do a recap real fast, and then we'll get to some honorable mentions. So, guys, our picks are in for the winner for Seth for biggest impact is cloud gaming, specifically with xCloud, and kind of the future there with SSDs and consoles, and Microsoft buying Bethesda being the runners-up there for him. For myself, my winner for biggest impact is COVID-19 in the games industry, with the executives leaving BioWare and the Epic v. Apple debate being my runners-up as well. Give a big round of applause to all those winners there. Honorable mentions. Let's get them out in the open here, Seth. You told me you had a bunch, so hit me with them.
All right, so I'm going to go high noon with this. So it's just bam, 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 bam. I'm just going to go real fast because this was a big year. Lots of things happened. We just talked about how the timetable has been moved forward considerably. But one thing, Cameron, it was Duel of the Fates. Darth Maul, Obi-Wan Kenobi on Naboo. fighting for that runner-up spot of SSDs and consoles. I ended up giving because I do think it's going to have a bigger impact. This one is more of a trend, but I want this trend to continue. And honestly, of all the things we talked about, this is the one I want continued investment in, and that is the continuing advancement of accessibility in gaming. I think this year in particular, I was impressed with Naughty Dog putting up an entire blog post about all the accessibility features they brought to The Last of Us Part 2. Arguably the biggest game launch of the year, right? That is a commitment. You know, Microsoft did the accessibility controller, which I think was a huge hardware jump, but now we're getting to the software jumps where there are people who cannot see to play video games that are able to play The Last of Us Part 2 and experience that story because of those features, right? There's a lot of options I've seen in Assassin's Creed Valhalla. I've seen in trying to think of a couple other games. I know accessibility in gaming was something that was in the Game Awards this year also. Like just having its own category was also an advancement in that. So real fast, not really too much more to say on that. I just hope that trend continues. And the reason I didn't give it one of my 3 seats at the top was because it is more of a trend that we've seen growing, and I want it to continue to grow. So, next one is Among Us as a game, and particularly social engagement games. I think Jackbox Party Pack was a great pioneer in this area, but the idea of being able to play a game without having to buy an extra console, just basically whip out your phone and play it. But Among Us is kind of like broken. It almost did like what Fortnite did for Battle Royales. Like it broke outside of just of the gaming shell, and it really brought in, you had AOC on Twitch playing Among Us, right? Like that's huge moments.
It's a big deal.
Social engagement games. Next couple, all tech related, but definitely game changers. Smart delivery. I can't tell you right now how important smart delivery is for the future of video games. We've had smart delivery on PCs forever, right? Like PCs have never had an issue with that. Consoles have been very segmented and divided. And as we begin to turn those hard cuts into crossfades, smart delivery is going to be key. Don't believe me? Look at the way the PlayStation 5 and PlayStation 4 versions of things are going. They're not going very well, and Sony is trying their best to fix it, but Microsoft really got ahead of it by saying it's called smart delivery and it works on everything. Like, that was smart. I think that was a smart move. Next is Quick Resume. Man, Quick Resume. Cameron, you got a Series X, so I know you've got to play with this a little bit. Not a major advancement, but I do think that it is going to be a huge quality of life improvement for a lot of gamers who don't have a wide breadth of games they're playing. If it can hold 3 or 4 games in memory, you're probably only playing 3 or 4 games at a time on your single console. So I think that's a cool technology. I can't wait to see that come to other consoles and other platforms. On the Sony side, the DualSense controller I think is really cool. I want to see more haptics in controllers. I think that's a really neat concept, especially on the trigger side of things. The way they do the resistive triggers is really cool, and I hope to see that continue to grow and evolve on the Sony side, and I hope Microsoft adopts something similar in the future. And then lastly, this one was really high up there, but SSD still beat it out. DLSS, and for those that don't know what this means, it stands for Deep Learning Super Sampling. And basically it's a feature built into these new NVIDIA graphics cards, and to kind of streamline the definition of this, it is a way that the graphics card can estimate using machine learning, AI, whatever jargon word, but it can basically estimate the way that things should look versus trying to fully render them, which is the more traditional graphics card way. So the idea here being that if a object is obscured behind, like let's say you've got a tree in the background, but then like a building gets in front of the tree, that now the graphics card isn't necessarily needing to render that tree in the background because it's not in sight right now, right? So it's going to kind of roughly estimate what that tree looks like. So if you like look through the window of the house, you'll still see the tree, but it's not going to be rendering the full quality version of it. So that processing power can be reinvested into the house itself, right? To make the house look better. So it's basically going to be adding proximity-based prioritization for loading things to make sure that things really far off in the distance look good, but they're not wasting power that could be used to make those nearby objects better. And that's a very dumbed down example of it. But DLSS is a really cool tech that you'll never hear anyone talk about, but will definitely make your PC gaming experience better as time goes by. It's going to make cards more effective, and it's going to allow lower power cards to get more horsepower out of them because it's going to be able to basically cut corners where it can. And that is, I think that's really the future of really, as we get to the point of diminishing returns for power ramps, that's going to be the next innovation, is where can we cut corners to maximize that quality to get it looking for 8K where we want it to look that way, but you're not having to drop $2,000 to do it. You can do it with your $300 graphics card.
Yeah.
So
Agreed.
that is my list. Biggest impact.
Let me go through. I don't have as many as Seth, but I've got some few that I want to talk about here. Some honorable mentions that I have for biggest impact. A softball one, an easier one. Rod Ferguson leaving the Coalition and going to Blizzard Entertainment.
Yeah.
That did happen this year. I think that was a twofold thing. Like leaving the Coalition, kind of not saying that they were in a bad state as well, but like he was the big leadership behind there and behind the Gears franchise. But more importantly, and I think the bigger impact comes with him going to Blizzard Entertainment to work on the Diablo franchise, specifically Diablo 4. And I think that is putting a great leader and someone who has helped make a lot of great games kind of make Diablo 4 successful, because everybody wants more Diablo. Doesn't
Myself
matter
included.
whether you have a phone or not. Doesn't matter.
Yeah.
The other one that I have, Mixer closing and the transition to the Facebook gaming. This was, I think, a big impact for me, and at least something I want to mention, because this kind of took the one big competitor to Twitch kind of out. Like Mixer, we thought, dude, you remember Ninja went to Mixer, says I'm streaming exclusively on Mixer. Other streamers saw this and start going, oh, we're going to partner with Mixer. It looked like everything was doing great, and then Mixer says, oh, we're going to shut down. We're going to transition to and be a part of Facebook gaming. Yeah. And really, Twitch was just like more power. And in the vein of the Mortal Kombat meme that I posted at the start of this Game of the Year stuff, is your soul is mine. And that's basically what's happened there.
That in YouTube. YouTube, I think, is another name to drop here, even more so than Facebook gaming. But
and then the other big impact I wanted to mention is Ubisoft and the Me Too movement that kind of really took its stride in the gaming industry this year, stemming a lot from the sexual assault allegations that were going on in Ubisoft. And I really think the time that us as an industry took to look at sexual assault allegations and just assault in general, and we've had it in instances before, but I think this year we really took a hard look, and I still think we need to take a harder look and continue to look and have optics on this, but like the cases and ideas of sexual assault and unfortunately, what I have to say right now is what I'm hearing, the misogynistic mentality that a couple of game developers and especially executives have within the gaming industry, and kind of promoting a better balance for that with not only women, but people of color and minorities and other things like that. And so I thought that's something that I think needed to be brought up in my honorable mentions there. So
fantastic. What a great conversation, man.
And that was
been my favorite so far.
And that's just the first one. We still got a couple more to go here.
We got 2 more in this session, and then for you listeners at home, you got 9 more potential episodes of this Game of the Year goodness. If you're listening live, you can listen to them every Sunday through January. We're going to be streaming them on twitch.tv/RocketPunchLive. However, you can also listen to each episode individually on your podcast service of choice. So if you're coming to us way later on down the line, or you prefer to listen in your car, ideally we hope you listen to all 10, but you can hop, skip, and jump around, listen to your favorite categories first. And then we've been doing a pretty good job of teasing some of the other category discussions. So you may be interested to jump in and listen to, what was Seth's thought on, biggest impact, or if you're listening to another episode. So
yeah,
I'm loving this. It's so much fun. As always, you can support us by loving the show, going and listening to it, giving us a like or a subscribe on Twitch or on YouTube. Also on podcast services of choice. Leaving a positive review really helps us, helps people see us.
It does.
And helps
oh my God, it
people
does.
Get involved in the Rocket Punch community. We've got some awesome stuff lined up for you. I'm teasing a little bit for you. I've got some awesome stuff lined up for you.
I have talked to Seth. He is my confidant. I've talked to him about some stuff. I've told him some stuff, and he's very excited. I'm very excited, and you should.
I'm most excited for that
redacted that we talked about with redacted. Yeah, I know.
Especially the part where. Sorry, I seem to be having a little bit of internet connection issues on my end, so
it's weird. I have no idea.
It's weird. I can't explain it, but thanks, Cameron, for such a great discussion, and thanks, listener, for tuning in and enjoying it. Whether you're doing it here live on Twitch or afterwards on YouTube or your podcast service of choice, we always appreciate you. Thank
you, guys. And with that, we're going to switch over to part 5 here shortly. So if you're watching this in succession, head over to part 5, which is going to be biggest fail. If you want the salt to flow in your ears, that is the episode you want to listen to. So stay tuned for that. We'll be right back in just a minute.